Thank you so much for inviting Pete's Garden to be here tonight. I'm really happy that Tamara Weber, our founder, asked me to do so. She has a son at Pembroke High School who's playing basketball tonight. So that worked out just great for me as well. I'm Jennifer Olsen. You can flip it, Sally, and I'll just kind of point to you from now on. I'm the volunteer coordinator at Pete's Garden. We are located at the Grace and Holy Trinity Cathedral, which is at 12th and Broadway, right across from Bardell Hall. We are so happy to be in the downstairs basement space of the cathedral. It was formerly the Kansas City Community Kitchen location before they moved over off the Paseo, and it had been vacant for at least 15 years. So we were very happy to move out of the lobby of Operation Breakthrough's new building and over into our own dedicated space, a commercial kitchen that is inspected by the health department, and all of our staff are trained in food safety handling techniques and food manager techniques. And when I say all of our staff, I mean Tamara Weber, our founder and director. I was her first employee about a year ago in May as the volunteer coordinator when she was pulling her hair out saying, I can't do all of this by myself. And I said, well, what are you thinking? So it was perfect for me. And then we have Craig Colbert is our, I like to call him our Craig of all trades, not our Jack of all trades. He does most of the operations. He does the food recovery itself and delivering the food. And then we recently hired Amy Sessler, who also helps work with volunteers. And we have a very renowned Kansas City educator who is a retired teacher, but now she is our chef educator for our Kids Feeding Kids program, which I'll tell you a little bit about, but really I'd like to focus more on our food recovery program. So we have a dual mission of reducing food waste and providing free, healthy take-home meals to families in need. And we recover surplus prepared food. So in 2019, you will notice that is right before the pandemic shut down the world. But in November of 2019, Tamara founded Pete's Garden. And a few months prior to that, her daughter was doing a school project on food waste. And it was so overwhelming to Tamara to learn about how much food is wasted in our system that she felt compelled to do something about it. So she started thinking, like, what is not happening in Kansas City? And where can I fill a gap that no one else is doing? She pitched the idea to a friend of hers who is at Hunt Family Foundation, who said, you absolutely have to do this. There is a need. Let's try something. So she did a pilot project with Operation Breakthrough. And not only was she concerned about this food waste problem, but as a busy working parent with financial means, she realized what a daily challenge it was to get dinner on the table. And she knew the importance of family mealtime, that there is so much data about how important it is for children to sit down, whether you talk about anything important or not. And so she said, well, if I'm having such a hard time, how is it possible with all my financial advantages, with my support system? How impossible is it for families who are facing food insecurity to do this very thing? So she took her idea over to Mary Esselman at Operation Breakthrough, who said, when can you start? And Tamara said, oh, well, it's just an idea. So she did start in the kitchen at Operation Breakthrough. You know, they have two separate buildings, and we started in the kitchen on the Travis Kelsey side, and with the ignition lab. And she worked with her friend Lon Lane from Inspired Catering. He provided the food in terms of the surplus from his catering. And then for this pilot project, because he was not having the kind of surplus that was needed, of course, he was preparing some food at that time. And so, well, no surprise, it was a huge success. And so the original goal that Tamara set when she started doing this for Operation Breakthrough was 50,000 meals. And to date, since November 2019, we've sent more than 250,000 meals into the community. So it has been far exceeding what she thought was possible. Part of that is unfortunately because the problem of food waste in America is so tremendous. So Pete's Garden was created to be part of the local solution to the enormous problem of food waste. We recover healthy surplus food. So the real question to her was, what if healthy surplus food could be redirected to families facing food insecurity? What if caregivers could take home a free, ready-to-heat meal when they pick up kids from school, after-school programs, childcare? Hardworking parents could spend more time connecting with their family over a healthy meal? Question mark. What if they could? So the pilot project that I just talked about. Oh, and it also included the Family Dinner Project, which is based in Boston. Harvard is highly involved in this Family Dinner Project, and they provided inserts that went in the grocery sack during the pilot project, and then for the beginning of our time. And we're sort of in between right now, figuring out, all of our partners have had those little conversation starters, and here's why family dinner is so important in their sacks. But we want to reinvigorate that, and we just are waiting for there to be 26 hours in the day, I think. So those were our partners. And we have two programs. So the vision of both programs is the same: to enable more families to experience the benefits of regularly sharing healthy meals together. And so most of what I really know about is the food recovery program. That's what I do as volunteer coordinator, and I'll talk to you in detail about kind of what does it look like when you volunteer at Pete's Garden, because of course I want you all to come volunteer. And then we also have this Learning to Serve, Serving to Learn at Kids Feeding Kids, which is a program at local, and by local for now, I mean local including rural Kansas City area. But this summer, we'll be expanding it into some training programs of teachers who are at Cape Girardeau and St. Louis. And so we're beginning to really expand outside of the Kansas City area with the Kids Feeding Kids program. So our food recovery program, we believe that food is social justice. Food is a human right, and that we have to do better. In the US, 38%, so a third of food goes unsold or uneaten. Most of that goes to waste, and I'll talk about some of the distinctions there, but 78 million tons wasted. Landfill, incineration, down the drain, or left in the fields to rot. And this organization, Refed, does a tremendous amount of data mining to really talk about the issues, or they really look at statistics. What are the problems? And let's look at it from a data perspective to know what we're dealing with so we can come up with solutions. And they're fantastic, and they're going to be my source for most of this information. So maybe the next slide. Yeah, so a tiny portion of that food is donated to people in need, the food that would otherwise be wasted. But 78 million tons, it's just insane. Let's go to the next slide. Oh, they're pictures one at a time. See, I've never done a PowerPoint. So great. That's what we're gonna get. So our food recovery, you're looking at one of our triple door fridges. We have two of them. We started with a normal refrigerator at Operation Breakthrough. And on any given day, we will have an entire 3-door fridge full of recovered food that needs to be packed. And this is Craig, and he is inside of our refrigerated van. And it looks to me like in this picture, he has just recovered all of this food that are in our plastic Cambros. He's bringing it back to Pete's Garden location downtown, where we are going to repackage it into family style meals. So we have 32-ounce container of protein, a 32-ounce container with green beans, a 32-ounce container with pasta. And those 3 items together are what we hope is going to make a family meal for a family. Can I see what the next, can I be surprised by the next photos that I included? Yeah, so this is a picture from the Operation Breakthrough Lobby, which was our beginnings. And the next one too, please. And this is our 32-ounce container with 24 ounces of barbecue pork from New Theater Restaurant. Okay, let's see what else we have. Okay, and this is the back of probably Mike Goodman or Dan Tira's car. So the Knights of Columbus bringing food. Okay, how about the next bunch? And again. And again and again. Until you get to 13 elephants. 13 elephants. So if the average elephant, African elephant is about, you know, if you've got 13 elephants, that's about how much it's going to weigh to get to the 78 tons of food that's wasted in the US every year. So let's see the next slide, please. Okay, so the environmental costs, obviously. All of this uneaten food still had to be grown. And so regardless of whether it gets wasted or not, it still has these massive impacts on our environment. So greenhouse gas emissions of uneaten food, it's 6.1% of emissions, 22% of water, 16% of our crops, and 24% of what goes in the landfill is wasted food. Okay, could we see the next slide, please? I think this is going to be Anthony Bourdain.
Right?
Yeah, so this is Anthony Bourdain. This is a documentary, an older one from 2017. Here's where it's available. If you've not seen it before. It's just 2 minutes long, but might be nice to hear somebody else talk.
When you first approached about this project, what did you think? Was there?
I hated the whole idea of this movie. It's like serious. I don't even know that we deserve to live. But as a young cook, I came up in an old school system, use everything, waste nothing.
I've actually never thought about what happens to my food when I throw it away. In the United States, 40% of the food we produce is going to waste.
Food production is the single biggest cause of deforestation, water extraction, biodiversity loss.
More and more people are concerned about climate change, and one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gases is the food that they're growing.
We are literally taking food out of the mouths of the hungry and sending food waste into landfill. That is crazy.
We don't need to produce more. We need to act different.
Chef did, they take something that's ugly and tough and transform it into something wonderful.
Celebrate utilization of nose to tail for an animal, but rarely for a farm.
Typically gets consumed, and that's delicious.
Wow, that's what I love about waste. You have to look at your kitchen in a different light. We got.
It's amazing, right? People think it's a garnish fish. I put it on the menu as burrata americana.
So you make up the this. Fishermen's wives took this reject fish and they created bouillabaisse. Prosciutto di Parma, that is a waste-fed pig. They're not sold as waste, they're sold as delicious dishes.
We have the power to demand change from the food industry, and unless we shout about it, they'll never change.
We need to harness people's obsession with food right now.
We're learning from that resourcefulness. Oh my God. This is like the best thing I've ever had.
It really does come down to what are our values as society.
Can you help me cook when we get home? I'll try it.
Tracking food waste doesn't need to be depressing, it's delicious.
It doesn't matter where you are, it doesn't matter how much money you have, you can reduce the amount of food waste.
That's exciting. This is something important. We can do it.
We can enjoy this self-satisfaction of doing the right thing. How often do you get to do that?
So I don't know if has anybody seen his documentary? So this is actually from 2017. Anthony Bourdain is deceased, but it still holds true. You know, they use the statistic 40%. I have the statistic 37%. So the next slide will show you where it's available. I don't remember if I found it anywhere free except Amazon Prime Video. If you have Amazon Prime, you have Amazon Prime Video. So I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. Wasted, the story of food waste. Okay, so surplus food. Again, what if we could take the surplus food and do something different than throwing it in the landfill? The next slide, I'll talk about restaurants in particular. Oh, actually, no, the next slide is semantics, and I'm not going to do that. But there is this whole, people who are really interested in food waste have all these different terms that in general get a little complicated. But when I say food recovery, I'm talking about surplus food that's going to go into the trash or to the landfill. I'm not necessarily talking about when you chop off the top of the carrot and you put it in your compost bin, right? I mean, that is, I'm not considering that to be waste if done in a careful way. So it's trashed after it reaches the consumer. So if it goes in the compost, it's not trashed. It can be lost also. So that 37% of produced food being wasted number also includes food loss. So if your refrigerator breaks down in your semi-trailer that's refrigerated and all the milk spoils, that's considered loss. Is it still wasted food? Yes. Does it still have an impact on our climate to have to then trash it? Yes. So restaurants and food services are an enormous part of this problem. They're not the only part, but 13 million tons of that 87 million that we talked about earlier. So 85% of it is wasted. Less than 1% is donated. More than 45% is from a full service restaurant. And then the obvious 70% is due to plate waste. So you either took too much food at the buffet, not any of you. Someone took too much food at the buffet, can't eat it all, and it gets scraped into the trash by someone in the kitchen afterwards. Or it happens because the serving that you got was so enormous, but it's not quite enough to bother to take it home. So it gets trashed. So we can't do anything about plate waste at Pete's Garden, but Tamara saw this opportunity with catering overproduction. 9% of that food is just a caterer overproduces because we don't want anybody to not get enough. And overproduction at a more of a full service restaurant kind of thing. Single largest component of nation's municipal solid waste. Let's go to the next one. So there's a food recovery hierarchy that the USDA, the Environmental Protection Agency, I can't see that tiny little thing up there. But this is the food waste hierarchy where we are going to have food that is going to be wasted, but we can do it in a better way than just all of it going in the trash. So the first thing that we want to do is reduce it, right? We want to reduce how much food is produced. The second is to feed hungry people. The third is to feed animals. The fourth is industrial uses. So processing it to make oils and such, composting, and then throw it in your trash, landfill and incineration. So feeding hungry people is where Pete's Garden comes in. That's what we do. There is a very unfortunate misconception about liability if you donate food. Health departments won't let you share it with somebody at a homeless camp if they know about it, right? That's all hooey, because since 1996, there has been this good faith act in place, the Good Samaritan Food Donation Act, that protects all of us who work on some effort to donate food to nonprofits. And it protects the people that work at the nonprofits or volunteer at the nonprofits as well. And then in January 2023, we just had new legislation passed that even further protects people. This is a picture, because I had a little space in the slide where it fit, of Erin Wishon, and she is the most amazing chef that we work with today, because she gave us a ton of food today. But I love her very much, and she sings our praises and really has talked about how, as a chef, the last thing you want to do is to throw your creation in the trash. And so she's much happier to donate it to Pete's Garden and know that it's getting to families. Next. So here's how it happens. So we've got our Knights of Columbus every Monday. I work on Mondays and Thursdays. And so Mondays, I know I'm gonna start my day off with a smile. So we used Mike, Dan, and Dave. And we have our Wednesdays, volunteers, Gina and Dan, and on Saturdays and Fridays, we have Ron, Dennis, and Colleen. And then staff member Craig. So that's the refrigerated van that I mentioned again, and he spends an enormous amount of his time out recovering food that has not been frozen, that needs to be refrigerated. All of these other folks are picking up food that is frozen. So the transit time is not of concern to us in terms of the food safety. So here's a list of our food donors. You can read it. I don't need to read for you. But of note is that New Theater Restaurant is our largest food donor. More than 50% of the food that we work with has been donated by New Theater Restaurant. And if any of you have been there, they have this buffet and it is wonderful and it is beautiful. And they call you up by table or by row to get your food. They want the last person at the buffet to have the same experience as the first person at the buffet. That means they overproduce. They overproduce at least one, if not two, because we get at least one of each item that was on their buffet. Every show. Every show. So it's a massive amount of food. And we have a rotation of our Cambro plastic pans that you saw a picture of. A lot of caterers are accustomed to using aluminum foil pans. You could argue the sustainability of aluminum foil versus the water it takes for us to clean and sanitize the pans. But we've decided that where we can use these reusable pans, we would like to do that. So at any given time, New Theater Restaurant has 50 of our pans and lids to get them through the next 2 or 3 shows. And then a lot of the others do use aluminum foil. The ones that donate to us every week have our Cambro pans in rotation. This is just a little explanation of what we tell our food donors. You know, why should you donate other than it's crazy to throw this food away? But, you know, we do have safe storage. We can adjust ourselves to whatever their needs are. We have a very complex and thorough system of weighing in what we get and also quantifying how much is going to which agency at the end of each day, so that at the end of the year, Tamara is going to send a letter to New Theater Restaurant, for example, and use all of our fancy math to say, you donated 50% of the food that we recovered, and that is X pounds of protein, X pounds of vegetables, X pounds of starch, and it has a value of, and now you can use this on your taxes because you essentially just donated. I wish I could remember the number. I can't remember it right now. It's probably on the website, but a lot of money, a lot of money. It's like I want to say it was something like $25,000 or something enormous. Okay. Okay, here's one of our volunteers. 2 of them were back in our Operation Breakthrough space. Our number for 2023 was 130,000 pounds that we recovered. And we do prioritize, you know, we can't do it all, right? So we do not do bread. We do not do dessert. There's so much bread out there. We couldn't possibly do it. And we want to feed people wholesome food. And so we don't even touch the desserts. And now that I say that, become volunteers. Sometimes you might see a plate of cookies out there for you to grab a cookie on your way out. Because if Craig has gone to pick up from Lowe's Hotel and they have all this food and they also have a container of dessert, often he will just grab it, take it with us, instead of saying, well, no, thank you. That's not really healthy food, you know. But we never seek that out. Then we would work with somebody to find a different donor. Okay. So we've got the problem of food waste. We have all this surplus food now that we know is out there. And we want to help with the problem of food insecurity. 1 in 10 Americans are food insecure. And that is confirmed recently by the Greater Kansas City United Way. That's true for our region as well. What do you think? Which value is correct? How many people face hunger in the state of Missouri? You gonna give me the next one? It's amazing. 809, almost 810,000 people in Missouri face hunger. They're food insecure. They're not sure where it's coming from the next meal. Okay. So that's 13.2% in Missouri. On the next slide, we'll see Kansas. We're standing here in Kansas. It's not quite as big in Kansas, but I think that has to do with population as much as anything else. So here's a very recent news story. It was a Topeka reporter who said, again, I don't need to read this to you, but Missouri's minimum wage is now $12.30. Kansas, we're still at $7.25 an hour. So what this means is a minimum wage worker is going to earn $15,080 a year. And that is 3.5 times less than the annual living wage in Kansas. Living wage. So it's really easy to fall into poverty if you're a minimum wage worker. And often, and again, I know that's not really your focus, but I think all of us as people of faith cannot conscionably think that someone can work a minimum wage job, whether it's $7.25 or $12.30 an hour, and find housing and have reliable transportation, even if it's a free bus, how far they're going to have to walk. All of those things. You know, how does someone become food insecure? A medical crisis. You need new tires on your car. You know, it's just very easy. And you could say the same thing of homelessness as well. I was talking to some volunteers about this today too. Let me see what else I wanted to talk about this. So harvesters, we don't technically work with harvesters. They're doing an awesome job. They're providing food to about 225,000 people each month. But as we saw, that number is much larger than that. And so we're really happy that they will refer food donors to us. Because if someone calls harvesters, for example, Lowe's Hotel, who is a newer food donor for us, when they got a new chef, when they opened that new hotel downtown, he immediately was trying to figure out, what am I going to do with all this food? He called harvesters and they said, oh, we don't do that. But you know who does? Pete's Garden. So that became a really great relationship. And certainly that's an ongoing thing where harvesters sometimes will need to call us in to help. The draft was an example of that as well. Let's look at the next slide, please. Yeah, go ahead and give me the next two, I think. Oh no, just keep going. Okay, so this is what, if you have food insecurity, these are the choices that you have to make. That you see this has a Kids Feeding Kids on it, our label, because this is a slide from our Kids Feeding Kids program that I'll give you a little more detail about in a minute. But Diane Mora in Kids Feeding Kids will take a program into the schools and she will walk them through this. So she'll talk to them all about how much food waste is in our system. And then she'll talk to the kids about how, you know, how are we going to use this surplus food to benefit people? Because people who are food insecure have these choices. They say, University of Missouri says, you know, they're having to decide between food and medicine, between food and education, food and childcare. And here's how they survive. They dilute their food or their beverages, right? They buy the less expensive, healthy food. We know you can go to McDonald's and get a meal that's much cheaper than what it would cost you to make the barbecue pork, green beans, and mashed potatoes. Okay, the next slide. So there are a couple programs in place that Diane also talks to a lot about in her Kids Feeding Kids program, that oftentimes what we find out from the families who are getting help from the agencies that distribute our food is they'll say things like, I make $100 too much to qualify for SNAP. Or they'll say, my employer will not give me any more hours because I would be full-time and he'd have to give me benefits. So a lot of this food insecurity are families who don't qualify for the programs, or they don't know how to apply, or all sorts of barriers. Again, what if we could do something about it? So what we do every day Every single day, somebody either brings the food to us on Monday. Here's my typical Monday without the presentation, but my typical Monday is I arrive at Pete's Garden downtown by 9 o'clock and Craig has already been out. He's already brought food back. Today, he brought food back from Broncato's Catering and it's waiting in the refrigerator for me to get there to bring it out of the cooler real quick, weigh it, get it back into the cooler, and then do the same thing over and over again for each of the food donors. Fortunately, those guys that bring the food on Mondays, they bring that New Theater food that has been frozen. That's the model that New Theater restaurant uses because they have more room in their freezer than their fridge. So thank God it comes in frozen because it gives me a little more time to get it in and out of the cooler. And actually, unfortunately, sometimes it's so frozen, it's really hard to work with. So we're working on it. You know, I feel like we're changing our operations to try to accommodate that. And then we make the little labels that go on each one that say, this is barbecue pork and you need to, it was made on February 4th. And so you need to use it by February 9th. And it also has a lot and item number on there. That's our tracking system that God forbid anyone got sick, we would know exactly where it came from. Or if we needed to recall something, we would be able to track it down. So income food is weighed and recorded. This is a big stack of food from Broncato's. And that particular day, we packed 1,023 pounds. That was a Monday. The reason I know that, it could have been a Thursday. No, could have been a Friday, but I've got my Friends in Chiefs gear because we recover food from the player meals. So the players stay at a hotel the night before the games, the home games, and they are fed by Aaron, who was in the picture that I showed you earlier. So it's really fun for people to be volunteering on that day because they are working with the most beautiful food that these players were eating to prepare them for the games. And then I love this picture on the right. That's Nancy and Maria, and they were both there today too. And I just had to take this picture because I watched as they created this friendship from working together time and time again because they're regular volunteers. Okay, just some more pictures. You know, this is a big number for us. We don't do 1,357 every day. That's going to be a really big Monday for us. And we don't have people come into our kitchen to get the food from us because you live downtown and you're hungry. There are other places that do that. We do not. We distribute in these large crates, the individual containers to Head Start programs, after school programs, and pantries. And then on the right is just another, because it's one of my favorites. So Craig also works at the Kansas City Royals doing parking. And this is one of our volunteers who does the labels on the containers. And he knows she's a Royals fan. So he got this poster and at the end of the season gave it to her. She was so delighted. Okay. Here's a list of our weekly recipients, and the little ones are the ones that get it when we have enough food to do that. But these agencies get the food every week. You can see the trend again. These are really more family-based programs. And without defining what a family is, I don't care about that. But Tamara, as a working mom trying to get food on the table, really wanted to try to first get food to those families. So when we can, we also have food for Blessings Abound, Literacy Case, and actually today we did. I took a picture of it thinking maybe I'd go over it, but I don't have all the time. And so Operation Breakthrough Parents, or there's a picture of Boys and Girls Club that I got to drive the van this summer because it was too hot. And then there's a small, you can't read it, I don't expect you to read it, but for Operation Breakthrough, we provide a list of what we are sending to them. And they, depending on how chaotic it is, 3 times a week that they distribute our meals, they'll do a whiteboard or something that says protein, choose one, and it will list the proteins that are there that day so that it feels a little, I mean, it has so much dignity for them to say, do you still have any of the sliced beef left? You know, and let them have some choice in what they're getting when they pick up their child from school or children. Okay. So again, we're trying to enable this family mealtime. Operation Breakthrough is our primary partner for that. 70% of those families live on less than $12,000 a year. So in 2023, we estimate that we sent out 1,000 free take-home meals. So pounds, meals, servings, it's very confusing. All I know is all of that was going in the trash. So again, that is an explanation of our first program, which is the food recovery program. And unless you're too bored, I'm going to talk a little bit about kids feeding kids. So this is a slide that I stole directly from Diane Mora. She's our chef educator. She was Kansas City Teacher of the Year in 2019. And now she is our amazing educator who takes her program into 25 schools since 2021. So one of the things that I find interesting to think about is how do we measure the success of a Kids Feeding Kids program? So 800 culinary students reached and their teachers, 900, almost 10,000 meals that they made and that then get distributed. So there's 10,000 meals. How many people are fed by this program? What about all the teachers? So I think it's kind of fun to just noodle on what's the biggest benefit there. They're all really important. So Kids Feeding Kids is, there's another image. I didn't realize these are layered. So she has done these events at all kinds of high schools. She works with either a culinary arts program or a consumer science program, which is what we called home ec when I was in high school. And depending on what kind of program it is, she tailors her lesson plans to fit the needs of that school. So a culinary arts school like Raytown Herndon Career Center, or where did I have food from today? Manual Tech. Those kids will have a 5-day lesson from her where she will talk about food waste, the food waste in our system. Where does it come from? She'll talk about food insecurity. She'll go through even more in detail than I did. Okay, let's say you make $7.25 an hour, and here's how much the average 1-bedroom apartment costs in Raytown, or she'll personalize it to where they are. And then they will come up with their menu, how many portions they're going to make, and depends on student size, and where do they want the food to go. So they spend those 5 days doing that. In a consumer science class, it's a little watered down because she doesn't typically have as much classroom time with those students, but it's still really impactful. And 15 in the Mahomies is our funder for that project. We have a new funder coming on board, and we're so incredibly excited about it. And it's going to allow us then to take it out further into Missouri, but I can't announce it until they do. Okay. So follow us on Instagram and Facebook and you'll find out. Okay, so that's okay. That's okay. I also just threw this in because of who the audience is here. There's a great handbook called the Waste Free Kitchen Handbook. And the next little image here, I'm not going to have you watch a 42-minute, but if you want to load the first 5 seconds of it, it'll give you it's on YouTube. It'll give you the URL if you want to go back and look at it later. And if it's hard to do it, then
Click on the picture with your mouse.
Me or?
yeah, you. Thanks.
Or
Let's see. Do I go back?
okay.
So you don't have to. I will just tell you that this author, Dana Gunders, has done a, you can just leave it there. We're just gonna skip it.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's written this handbook and she did a TED Talk and you can find it on YouTube. Her name is Dana Gunders. And she talks about a waste-free kitchen, which when I watched this TED Talk, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible person. But for example, I was working with Diane Mora. She did the catering for our event last year. We did a fundraiser event that unfortunately we're not going to be able to do this year, but she was using parsley. And we were working in the kitchen together, and she wants 3 leaves of parsley that are together on the stem, because she's also a caterer if you want an incredible meal. And so we're counting literally hundreds of these little 3-leaf parsleys. And then there are the stems, right? A lot of stems, a lot more stems than there are parsley. And so as we're cleaning up, and we have our compost at Pete's Garden, there's crumbs, there's whatever that can't go in the container. So we obviously need to compost a handful of things. We empty the 5-gallon bucket, we empty once a week at the most, and it's not full. But anyway, she said, hey, do you want to take any of these home? No, thank you. I mean, I'll take a handful and chop it up and put it in my salad or whatever stems. That'd be great. She said, oh no, you should take it. You make pesto, right? I'm like, yeah, I make pesto every year. It makes great pesto. No basil, just parsley stems and cheese and nuts and and olive oil and the things that go in. I never would have dreamed of that. Okay, so 250,000 meals and counting. We have recovered and redirected over 110 tons of prepared proteins and sides, and we've led 25 kids feeding kids events. It's remarkable to think that this was an idea that somebody had while working with her kid on a school project and thinking, okay, I'm helping Grace with her homework. How am I going to get dinner on the table tonight with all the means available to me? So that might be the last slide. Oh, here's a list of our key funders. Most of our funders are, a couple $1,000s here and there, and they are not even included on this list. So these are key funders have given us big chunks of money to enable us to purchase the refrigerated van, to hire me part-time. And then our next one, and a lot of those too. Okay, and then here's the question that I was asked right when I wasn't asked this directly. Where's your garden? We don't have a garden, but Pete had a garden. And Pete was Tamara's dad. So growing up in Pennsylvania, Pete would have this tremendous vegetable garden, and he would, as any of you know who have a garden, when the tomatoes are producing tomatoes, you can only eat and can and freeze and mix sauce so many tomatoes. And so she and her sister would be out there in the neighborhood, sack of whatever was the extra that you never would waste in her house. And so it seemed like the perfect idea to name it Pete's Garden, even though we don't technically have our garden. Our garden is all over the city from surplus food that is donated by caterers, restaurants, food service.